What's up, friends? Welcome to the 2-6 podcast with Luke and Adrian. On this podcast, we focus on Web3, business, and achieving your personal potential. On today's episode, Adrian and I will talk about the concept of failure. A lot of the time, people allow the fear of failure to hold them back from doing certain things that they want or need to do. So we'll talk about some ways to overcome that fear. We'll also talk about some of the good that can come from having experienced failure in our lives, and some of the things that our personal failures have taught us and made us better than we were before. With that all said, let's get to it. What's up, friends? Welcome to the 2-6 podcast with Luke and Adrian. On this podcast, we focus on Web3, business, and achieving your personal potential. In today's episode, we're going to focus a little bit more on the business side. And one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is really in terms of the way that failure can be a lesson as we kind of go through life. So a lot of times, we start off thinking that, oh no, I don't want to do this thing. What if I fail? But I think a lot of times we don't consider that, having that experience, whether it was a success or a failure, is a learning experience, and it can be a good thing depending on how you look at it. So that's really what we want to talk about today. So Adrian, why don't you kick us off? Let's talk a little bit about your kind of attitude about failure in general.
Yeah, I think usually what pops into my mind is like, it wasn't necessarily failure in itself. It was more of being close to failure. What catches my mind is because it impacted me so much. But say 2008, 2009, the whole financial crisis, trying to sell real estate, having a mortgage, having young kids, doing all that jazz, and getting to the point to where 8 out of 10 people couldn't sell their house. So having to generate income was like a huge issue, and nobody could sell. There weren't any buyers out there. A lot of people were even nervous about buying, for one. I think for me, it really comes down to like, what I had to do. Like, dude, it was a struggle, right? I mean, it sucked, man. That time frame, it was a little scary because you're like, oh my God, dude, nobody's going to be able to sell. Everybody's underwater. You're telling people you have to come to closing with 20, 30, 50 grand. And they're like, what?
I remember that time. I bought my house right before all that happened. And there was a period of time where if I wanted to sell the house, even though I put down a pretty decent down payment, I would have had to come up with $25K just to sell the house. Like, forget profits, forget equity, any of that. It was a wild time.
And your brother didn't give you a discount. Sorry, Luke, but I appreciate you. You are a long client of mine. I do appreciate it.
No, that was after I already had moved there. No, when you sold that house that I had, I was
okay. That's right.
It was pre the crisis. This is the house I bought with the equity that you helped me to get.
But right. What it kind of came down to was a dude, it was just a total struggle, man. It was like, man, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. I'm going to be able to pay daycare, right? So I think really, I mean, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Now I can always say it's a good thing because what it taught me to basically hustle, right? Kind of like what our dad would say, like, have the ganas to do something, which basically means to have the drive, the internal fire to do what you need, whatever you need to do it and get it done. And I think that was one of the biggest parts, and I did do that. Stacy and I basically got to the point to where we needed to, dude, we were cleaning houses, like our listings, like, dude, he was like, oh yeah, we can hire it out. And we ended up doing it and just doing things all across the board. So I would just like, hey, these guys are going to charge X amount. I have a company that'll do it. I started a little LLC. And I was the grunt doing all this work. And, I didn't mind doing it. I was just happy I was going to make, a couple $100 doing things here and there. Because truly what it comes down to, you almost get to the point of doing what you need to do legitimately to basically survive, right? It's a survival game. And sometimes I miss that. I mean, I shouldn't say sometimes, it's hard to miss that, but it's just having that drive or that fire inside of you to where you got that hustle and you want to do whatever you need to do to be successful. And like what Gary Vee might always say is it's hard to be it's hard to get that drive when you're being fed, right? You're only going to strive to do so much when you're being fed, but when you're hungry, you're doing it just to eat, right? So you're hustling, you're working your ass off, and I was doing it all. And man, I was dude, it was frightening. I hated that time period, and I think what it also ultimately did though too is that it helped me prepare for the next cycle of whatever that might be, right? And we haven't seen that cycle. Is it coming up? Maybe. But, ultimately it was like, dude, I'm going to do whatever I need to do. I'm going to stop going to these stupid expensive dinners, having, large tabs at a bar, whatever it may be. I wasn't going out a lot, but still I was doing some stupid shit when I probably shouldn't have been doing it. But it just, if anything, it helped me learn what to not to do. And man, when you look back and like, damn, dude, I wish I had that $100 now. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, how about you, man? Tell me some of the goods. I know you probably went through some shit too.
Yeah, no, but I think it's good, kind of what you shared, just to kind of stay on that topic for a little bit. I think one of the things that what I heard from you when you were talking about that is that well, sometimes the fear of failure, that kind of thing, or the fear of like, hey, I can't give up and I can't lose on this, really can be a motivator. And I went through a little bit about that during the same time. So in kind of my line of work was also very affected by the financial crisis. And I was at a point where I was working 70, 80 hours a week. And like sometimes people throw out that number just saying a lot, but really I was 12 hours a day during the week, 12 hours on Saturday and a half day on Sunday. Like it was working all the time. And
Dude.
sometimes it just, one of the things I think it can do is it can make you appreciate it when you're not in that situation. But then I
Yeah.
also think that you learn from it. So kind of like what you were saying in terms of, being at a point where you didn't have all that excessive money that you could put at things teaches you that, hey, do I really need to be, you know, allocating all my funds to that kind of fun stuff, or do I need to be more responsible with it? And I think that's probably part of what's helped you to be as successful as you've been.
Yeah, dude. It was. I mean, yeah, dude. I didn't mention it, but dude, working 7 days a week or working 30, 60 days straight, dude, it's no joke, man. I mean, I can't say I've been doing that recently, but dude, back then I had to, right? And it was just more of you're almost kind of like in a mode of survival, right? And it's like, dude, you got to do this. You got, and for selling houses, dude, it's not like you sell a house, you get paid that day. It's like, dude, it's 45 days out. It's 60 days out. So it was
Hmm.
almost like trying to fill that pipeline, doing what I had to do now to somewhat survive. And I wasn't down about asking people for money or asking for help. Thankfully, I didn't have to. But dude, it got freaking close, man. It was close.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably one of the things too, like just when you get in that mode, it sometimes makes you just more productive overall, where you can just accomplish more than maybe you would have
Yeah.
during normal times. I think there's always that saying of, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person, because that busy person's the one that gets things done. It's like, all right, you want to add another 2 hours on my 70 hours of work? Fine. It's only, a tiny percent of my time. So they get it done. So anyway, I always thought that one was interesting.
That's why I always have you do all this editing of this videos because I know you're busy. Get it done, Luke. Might take
Yes.
me 8
Yep.
hours.
Yeah. By so definitely some late nights doing that with the pod, but it's all worth it. We enjoy making them.
Absolutely, man. We appreciate you, Luke. Appreciate you.
Yep. And anytime, anytime.
So what
Good
about you,
deal.
man?
Yeah.
I know
So
you got some stories, you got some failures, some successes, or some struggle.
yeah,
We all got
yeah.
some
So
struggle.
so so I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. So my line of work is a little bit different than Adrian's. I'm in more of a corporate environment, and one of the things that I think about a lot, like I literally I literally,
Sorry.
just
Sorry.
it's always been on my mind, and kind of how I really kind of made me who I have been as a leader is, all attributed to one specific failure that I had. So I was new to being a leader. So it was probably my second team that I ever had. I was 22, 23 years old. And I was running a team of salespeople, and we were really successful. So we were having, we're top in the region in terms of our performance. We were doing great. And one of the things that happens when you have that kind of team is your people get promoted. And that's exactly what you want. You want them to move on, to do better things, and to go on from there. But I had a lot of folks from my team. It was a small team. There were only 5 of us total, and 3 of them got promotions. So I had my assistant manager, myself, and um, you know 3 brand new people to their role. And one of the things that we did is we liked being on top. We liked being one of the top performing teams. And so, while our new folks were going through training, me and my assistant really kind of stepped it up and, maintained our sales numbers. We really kind of continued to drive that and do well. And what ended up happening though is, eventually your folks are done with their training, and because we're kind of achieving all the sales, we didn't really attribute a lot of time for them to teach them how to do it. Like, that's my job as a leader, is to teach people how to be successful in their jobs. And I wasn't doing that. I was doing their job in their place. And what ended up starting to happen is I'm getting, calls from my boss saying, why isn't so and so doing so well? Maybe we need to start writing them up. And it broke my heart to know that this is my fault. It's not their fault. I didn't hire a bad person. I wasn't a good leader to teach them that. And so one of the things that I really kind of took away from that is that, okay, regardless of what it might hurt in the short term, it is my responsibility as a leader of a team to teach people how to be successful, to empower them, and hold them accountable, of course, as well. But that's something that I kind of made as, a big part of my identity as I, moved forward to other jobs within my company, to really make sure that I always put that first and foremost. So definitely a big life lesson. And it's something that taught me a lot.
No, that's cool, man. And that just kind of recapping what you said, and that's the difference, I think, from somebody like yourself that maybe is more corporate driven, or, you have a job, what I would call it a W-9 versus say 1099, or where I was like not selling, like, I guess having like we're responsible for people. And I think it's almost like that fear of failing the people that are relying on us, or, our team members. For me, for being self-employed, only get paid for what I sell, and there is no salary. But I did have an assistant at the time, and it's like, dude, I can't fail, or she's going to be struggling. And I was just talking to a space kind of similar to what you're talking about today, is when people are kind of relying on you. It's like, well, I can't do my job unless you guys got sales, or it's one of those things where you start having people that are relying on you, whatever it may be, like training, or just allowing them to do their work, or maybe giving them enough work to do. Man, it's a struggle when you have, it's one thing to struggle on your own, but dude, it's on a different level when other people are relying on you. And I would imagine that's kind of how it was for you, was, just these folks are relying on you to teach them how to do things right.
Yeah.
I get a little
absolutely.
selfish sometimes. We all get a little selfish sometimes. But you have people depending on you. It's a totally different thing, man. That's crazy. I'm glad you shared that,
No,
Luke.
for
I've
sure.
never heard that story before.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Good deal.
That's why
How about you?
Me as much
Anything
as
else?
I do. You got to teach me. You got to teach me how to do my email right. Connect it all together, and not be like our dad that gets frustrated at technology.
Yes,
right,
which I am excited. So I did mention to him today, by the way, he is open to joining us on the podcast. So listeners, definitely look forward to hearing from him. He's actually been one that, like, for our whole lives, has taught us a ton about learnings from him, both things that are good and things that were his failures. So we definitely will look forward to having him join us on the pod.
And I'm going to have him explain having the ganas and what that means. I'm going to have him explain it, because I say it and it probably means something totally different than what he meant it to be. But I guess it just, I don't know, it could be a bad word for all I know.
Yeah. So speaking of that,
it'd be interesting to have him on, dude. I don't know, man. Get me all nervous having that dude on.
Speaking of ganas, anything that you might want to share in terms of things that maybe you needed to use that that got us to get up the courage to do something or anything like that has helped there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, dude, it's like doing this podcast, right? I mean, it's wasn't necessarily easy to think about. I think we can all be pretty critical of ourselves, just like I was telling Luke before. I'm looking at myself on the camera and I'm like, man, what's going on in my eye? It's the lighting is never going to be perfect. I threw on a hat because my hair looked like shit, but I wasn't going to stop the podcast because of it. I changed my I changed my shirt, changed my hat, threw on a hat, and it's more of just showing up and doing it, right? I mean, pushing the button. I've been spending a lot of time on X Spaces, and dude, I have to say from where I remember my very first time I got onto the speaker box or the speaker panel. It was through the Chicken Project, and they were I don't know if they were a special guest for Swarms, I think it might have been. And I go up there because I'm just asking a question like, dude, like I don't even know anything about Web3, blockchain, anything. I don't even know what you guys are doing, but like, how did you guys get here? And I think they kind of threw them off because I was like, what are you guys doing here? They were, I don't know if they were talking about I don't know what it was, but I was so confused. And I think I even called projects protocols back then. It was calling, I mean,
Yep,
anyway, it
I
was just
remember
a
that.
bunch of weirdness. But versus say today, and dude, now it's like I just keep going on these X Spaces. I'm just a real estate guy, dude. Not I would say small town, but I mean I'm just a regular real estate guy, dude. I'm not like this big deal or this big name, and I'm getting on these spaces with these dudes that are basically um, big names or related to big names, and dude, shooting the shit with them, talking business, talking real estate, talking Bitcoin, talking whatever. And it doesn't. I think my biggest problem is breathing. Is like, dude, breathe, because sometimes I can tell when I'm nervous, and I'm like, oh shit, I think I probably sound nervous. Like, oh, is he first time on stage? But just remember to breathe for one when you're up on there on any stage. It's like public speaking, but it's like totally different. It's like you're not you're not there for like video or in person, but it's just even I think it's almost worse because it's auditory. And sometimes I'm not the best with my words. I don't have a huge vocabulary. I say a bunch of words that probably don't exist. But it's kind of still standing up there, and yeah, I have some intelligent things to say. I would imagine every once in a while, but it's like
You do,
trying
you
not to
definitely
look like
do.
a freaking idiot when you're on the stage because there's no other noise except for your own voice, and it's sometimes of a panic. It's like, don't look to see how many people are listening. Don't look to see how many people are listening. And dude, it could be like 1,000 people, and it's
Yeah.
like oh shit. Like anyway, so it's truly like the more reps, the more practice, just like working out. It's not all about how much weight you can bench press or lift. It's about the repetitions, right? It doesn't have to be huge. Just start somewhere small if you need to. Build up that confidence. I think and I'm not a pro. I have a lot to learn, but I think what really helps though is just doing those reps, right? Just getting into these
Yeah.
spaces, talking to these big names. I still don't necessarily have an answer for my wife, like why I'm spending all this time doing what I'm doing. Other than it's fun. Like you and I have fun doing this. And I don't have to get dressed. I don't have to go. I'm going to go tomorrow to some apartment update or multifamily thing tomorrow. It's a luncheon, dude. I haven't been to a luncheon, dude. I don't even know when the last one I went to. 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm going to a luncheon tomorrow. I'm going to eat for free. You know when the last time I ate for free was? This has been a
Right.
while. I don't know if it's worth it, right? Because I'm going to try to meet some local guys. I probably know some guys over there, but I'm going to be networking. But truly, it's like, oh, I'm talking to so and so once a week. I'm jumping on so and so's podcast or his X Space 2-3 times a week. So I guess for anything, especially if you have, I know there's a lot of people that have anxiety of public speaking or anxiety of networking and talking to people, um, regardless of who they are. I can keep going on and rambling on and on about who we met the last year, going to South by Southwest and some of the superstars that we met, Bill Murray and whatnot. But it's almost like just like getting past it and it's not easy. But the only way that you can do it easily is just by practicing and getting on and talking to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
Luke, I think you've came out of your
100%.
shell quite a bit, man. You've came out quite a bit, dude. You used to be kind of a nervous dude, maybe
Yeah. Definitely have.
shy guy.
I would say probably like mostly like high school, college time. I definitely was more of the quiet side. Even early into my career, I did. And it's just one of those things. Sometimes you identify something that is a weakness of yours or that kind of thing, and the more you practice it, the more you dedicate your time to improving it, the better you can be. So I think for me, like really it was a boss of mine in particular that I saw that as an opportunity for me, encouraged me to take some courses in speaking. I took the Dale Carnegie course, which is an amazing course. If you haven't already read How to Win Friends and Influence People, I would highly recommend it. It's an old book. I think it was written in the 20s, something like that, and it sounds like a loser's book. It's like Dale Carnegie's long since passed away, so he's not going to be updating his title anytime soon. It sounds like someone that doesn't know how to make friends, but it is hands down the most influential book that I've ever read. It really is focused on how to be successful by being a good person is probably the best way that I could explain what it is. And the Dale Carnegie organization actually has a course. And so one of the big things that you do in that course is you're doing all these things like in personal development as a whole, but every class you have to do something that's going to get you just a little bit out of your comfort zone. So you're going to speak in front of the group at every class. You're going to do a lot of practice things. You're going to practice it before. You're going to do it there. They teach you all these great things. And really over time doing that, I ended up leading the Toastmasters Speakers Network through my company. And, it's just really had been something that, at one time was definitely something I was terrified to do. And now I think the biggest audience I've spoken to in person was about maybe 800 people.
Holy shit!
It's definitely something that, you can, if you are afraid of something, or if you do have something that's a weakness, just know that that doesn't have to be how it stays. Yes, you're probably going to have some challenges doing it the first one or two or 30 times that you do it, but you'll get better. And if it's something that you really want and you really dedicate your time toward improving, you can. Now, some things are obviously like I can play, as much basketball as I want. I'm never going to play in the NBA. Same thing with, soccer or anything else. But other things I definitely can, even if I'm not good at them when I first start.
Wow, it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Public speaking.
Yeah.
I have to say though, taking that public speaking class, the old C&J communication journalism class at UNM, it was probably like the best thing, right? And you're a lot more organized than I am, and having that outline. But that was like the importance of like having an outline, right? I mean, I think it makes sense. Like even we're kind of winging a few things here and there, but for the ultimate post or podcast, we generally have somewhat of an outline to follow. But when you're free flowing, you're like, what the hell am I going to say? It's like talking to a chick. It's like, dude, what am I going to say? I don't know. Start with saying hi, right? Don't like, don't like say nothing. Like starting the conversation is like showing up, right? It's showing up. Like
Yeah.
you're there to go, oh, I'm going to walk away. But it's
Yeah.
ultimately that same thing of just showing up, saying hi to people, introducing yourself, right? Very first thing. I kind of find myself as having probably a lot more confidence than I did when I first started. But a lot of times, dude, it's like, dude, who cares? Dude, I'm just a real estate guy. Who gives a shit? Stacy Sacco, still thinking about him. One of my sales professors at the UNM was all about like the elevator speech, or the elevator pitch, just talking to somebody within a short amount of time, getting to know them, telling them about what you are, who you are. And, but I mean, it's just those small little conversations, dude. And
Yeah.
if you don't like the conversation, move on to the next person.
Yeah. One thing I did want to say though, like since we're kind of on the topic of public speaking, I think like what you said was good. Like knowing what you're going to say. Like sometimes I think people overthink things with stuff like that. Like they want to script out like the whole thing that they're going to say. Like, oh, if I'm going to get
Absolutely.
up there to talk, what am I going to speak about line for line for 20 minutes? And that's just too much for your brain to think about. If you try, and some people can memorize to that level of detail. I've never been one of those people. The only thing I ever might script out or kind of practice is, what's my first line? If I just know what my first line is going to be, and I have some general idea of what else I want to talk about, that is enough, because the line will get me started. That momentum gets you going. And then you can just be natural. You can, like, let's say you made a list of bullet points and you do them all out of order. You know how to speak. You speak to people all day long. You can make it all make sense. And so I would just say, if you're nervous to get up to speak, just kind of know, okay, what's the first thing I'm going to say? Like, and then after that, just be natural and take it from there. And it'll really help.
Absolutely. And I think you and I are sometimes totally opposite, Luke. Like you tend to be super organized and have structure, and I'm like, I don't need a practice. Let's just go, man. Free flow it. Let's do it. And so sometimes I'm like, so what are we talking about today? What are we doing? But no, it's like having that combination, right? Where I'm ready to go with no plan. Luke's got sometimes a very detailed plan, but it's sometimes, we probably complement each other to where, you give us a little bit of structure, and then I don't know. Maybe I make things interesting. I don't know. Maybe I do.
You
Maybe I
do.
don't.
You do. So,
It
giving the
depends.
listeners all the behind the curtain on how the 2-6 podcast is produced. One other thing I did want to share in terms of, things that, failure can teach us, though. So I mean, Adrian, you know about this, but so in high school I was in wrestling, and so when I joined the wrestling team for the first time, I knew nothing about it. I had some friends that were joining it. I was a freshman in high school, thought it might be good. Also had just a little bit of side motivation that our dad had coached us all throughout our youth in baseball, basketball, everything else, and he knew nothing about wrestling, and he couldn't tell me how to wrestle. He was great. I learned a ton from him. He was an amazing coach, but I kind of wanted to do my own thing. So I joined something he didn't know how to coach me in, and I was not good. And to say that I was not good is an understatement. I was very bad. So bad that I did not win a single match my entire freshman year on the wrestling team. I also did not win a single match my entire sophomore year on the wrestling team. And that's a lot of failure for somebody to do. Like, that's 2 years of nothing but failure. Like, obviously I won some matches in practice, but that's not the same. It's not, the stakes are not nearly as high. Somebody might just be tired and they don't care. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I did really bad. And then sophomore year or junior year, I did a little bit better. I actually placed in a tournament. And then senior year, I was actually on varsity and went undefeated for the first half of the season. And so that's one of the things that I think about a lot, because I think there's a lot of people that maybe would just give up after the first probably 5 losses and just like, hey, I'm not naturally good at this. I'm going to move on to something that I am good at. Or I don't like losing. The failure's too hard on me personally. But I think for me, one of the things that it did is it taught me resilience. It taught me persistence. And it also taught me that sometimes things are just hard. And even if your natural ability doesn't set you up for success there, you can accomplish things that, you really set your mind to. And I think for me, it really helped me, not just in, sports or that kind of things. If I think about anything that I'm actually good at now, like we just talked about public speaking, I used to be awful at it. I used to be terrified about it. And now I like to think I'm pretty good at it. So it's one of those things that, you know, the more you can know that it's going to be okay if you don't have success right away, the better you are just in general. And you can try new things, experience new hobbies, and, anything that I'm good at now, I didn't start out that way. And so, um, just one of the big learnings I had.
Yep, I was there for most of it, Luke. I remember.
Yep.
Would you say that everything or anything that you do now is easy compared to wrestling practice?
Physically, yes. Physically, yes. Well, okay. So I have done a couple of things. I know maybe you don't, if you're watching the podcast on YouTube or Spotify, you might not think it to look at me, but I have done a couple Ironmans. I've done 12-ish marathons. So I've done a lot of those. And I would say that Ironmans are
Understatement.
definitely up there with the more challenging than the wrestling practice. It definitely lasts longer. I think my best Ironman I did in 13 hours. My other one I did in 15 hours, something like that. So anytime you're working out for 13 to 15 hours continuously, that's going to be harder than a wrestling match. But if I'm only measuring like the 9 minutes of a wrestling match, yes, that would be the hardest thing I've ever done.
And if you ever get a chance to see Luke's legs, he's got like these nicest looking calves because he's a massive runner. Don't let him fool you. This dude can't. I don't think you could ever stop running. I think you could run forever. I remember you telling me like, "What do you mean you can run forever?" He's like, "I think I can just keep on running." Like Forrest Gump. I mean, I don't even think Forrest Gump was out back then. But it was like, you're like, yeah, I think I could just run forever. I was like, dude, what? I just couldn't comprehend that. Like,
Yeah, that's
I'm
it's
a
something I got to
baseball
get
guy,
back to.
so short sprints, no long distance.
Well, awesome. Adrian, anything else that you had, anything that, in terms of things that have either not necessarily been failures, but things that have been, been challenges for you that you've learned from, or think that maybe listeners might be able to benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of recapping is don't let fear take you down. Don't I would say fight through it. Showing up is a big part of that. So don't be so strung through the negativity of how you look or making sure something's so perfect to do it. I think Luke and I probably had a lot of anxiety about even just doing this podcast. But the whole point of just like simply just pushing the button got me started with doing, hosting spaces, just having general conversations about whatever we wanted to talk about, getting on big spaces and talking and being a speaker. But don't let that fear of failure keep you down. It's more of just like, dude, I'm going to do this. Be positive. I think Luke can probably agree with this. We both tend to keep a lot of positivity. We like to be around positive people. It's really hard. I mean, I know I can be negative at times, but it's more of just keeping that positive mindset, especially about yourself. Getting, people don't necessarily get. I don't know. People are getting a little tired about the word mindset, but I think mindset's key. Staying
Yeah.
positive constantly, not being afraid of doing things, and if you are, just do it and see what happens. Just say, all right, this is a rep. Let's see how this goes. That's about it. I just got blasted at
Or,
a Bill Maher
or,
comment the other day that, man, took some jabs. Talking about negativity, right? It's like, dude, homie's over here trying to like get his show back on the road, and people are being negative, and I'm like, dude, why everybody being negative? And it's like, I didn't know what people were talking about, like the amount of negativity that's out there, especially on any platform. Dude, I got a taste of it yesterday. I was
yeah.
like a little punching bag. But anyway, but even that stuff, it's like, dude, I can care less. I don't know these people. I feel sometimes negativity is maybe a sense of dissatisfaction with somebody's own life, so they feel better about themselves by trying to bring down others. So I've always think about that, and that's why I think it's so important to stay away from people that are negative, because they might be that same type of person that may be jealous or envious of your own success. And whether that's being friends or coworkers, dude, I stay away from them. I stop talking to them. It's like, dude, you're not gonna. I'm feeling good right now. Don't bring me down. So energy, man, positive energy, I think is huge. Just showing up. Don't let the negative people bring you down. Stay away from them. Stay positive. Fight fear. Get through it.
So, and I think one of the things I would say as a takeaway, if you kind of haven't already gotten it from today's session, is, you know, look at failure as one of two things. Like if you're worried about like, I don't want to do this because I don't want to fail. Like you're either going to have success or you're going to learn something from it, and you're going to be stronger either way. So if it's something you want to do, just take that leap. Just do it, and you might find that it works out for the good, or you might learn how to do it better the next time you try it. And as long as you're making those attempts to try to do the things that are important to you, that you believe in, then you're going to ultimately, be better off for having done that. So that would be my takeaway there.
Dude, 100%, man. Ultimately, you can only analyze so much, right? Even if you go hunting, you can only aim so much. At some point, you got to pull the trigger, and it's just you stop aiming. Aim. You can aim is good, but man, you got to pull the trigger once in a while and do it. So anyway, we'll go too far into that.
All right, friends. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up there. As usual, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please like and review the podcast and subscribe so you can be a part of future podcasts for the 2-6. Also, in today's episode, we're going to try out a new feature. So Spotify actually has a feature where you can use a Q&A. And what we'd love to hear from you is if you go into that Q&A, you can actually just scroll down to the bottom of the screen. You'll see a Q&A section there. We'd love to hear from you. What are some of the things that failure has taught you? And you can share as much detail as you'd like in terms of, you don't have to share what failed, but you can share what you learned, anything like that. We'd really love to hear from you. And we'll be reviewing those. And if we find any that we think would be good to share on the podcast, you can look forward to hearing us talk about that in a future episode. If you are watching on YouTube, you can also do the same thing in the comments. You won't see the question there, but please go in and do that. And we would love to chat with you more there. So with that, friends, thanks so much for joining today. We really enjoy spending some time with you here, and we look forward to hearing about your experience in the comments. Thanks so much, everyone.
100%. See you guys later.